Today's guest is Paul Morton, a man who's been leading sales teams since LinkedIn still had a grey background and cold calling actually meant calling people. He's the founder of the Practical Leadership Academy, a platform built to help great salespeople become great leaders. Because, as Paul knows all too well, being a top biller doesn't automatically mean you know how to run a team without causing at least one emotional breakdown per quarter. With over 20 years of commercial experience, Paul has led everything from scrappy startups to scaling rocket ships, all while staying grounded in a philosophy of servant leadership, accountability, and zero tolerance for buzzword bingo. He's allergic to vague management speak and firmly believes that leading people should involve more coaching and less ego. He also hosts the Leadership That Sells podcast, where he shares hard-earned wisdom with humor, humility, and the occasional jab at micromanagers everywhere. Paul Morton, welcome to the You've Got Sales podcast.
David, an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me as your guest.
Thank you so much. I mean, we're just talking off air there, Paul, about some really interesting developments in leadership within sales. And I think that would be a really great place to start. You know, I've got so many people listening to this who are sales leaders or sales leaders who are looking to become one in the next couple of years, who might be that top biller right now. So I'd be really interested to learn a bit about what you've seen as the evolution of a sales team leader, those different sort of phases that they go through, and some of the interesting stuff that you're working on for sales team leadership.
Sure thing. Number one is, if you're listening to this and you are interested in becoming a sales team leader or a sales manager, my number one piece of advice is don't. Just don't do it. Stay as a biller, stay billing, stay making the money. The number of individual contributors that I have had who've worked for me, or even sales managers who've worked for me who've made more bloody money than me, is really annoying, really annoying. However, that said, if it is in your soul to make other people successful, then, and if this is the thing that you burn for, then and only then should you consider it. Only then. Because if you like selling things and you're not good at spreadsheets, being a sales manager is the wrong bloody job. So the core of it, I think, is the recognition that you need to burn to see other people be successful. And then
is that the number one thing you must have in your heart? Is that if that's not there, just don't try. You have to have that one, right?
Totally, that's it.
Yeah.
It's the two things I have for every role. Doesn't really matter whether it's a finance guy or it's a coder or whatever. You have to have curiosity and you have to have courage. And it doesn't mean anything outrageous. It's curiosity for your métier. It's curiosity for whatever you're working with. And if you're a salesperson, that's curiosity for people and relationships. And courage. And you have to have the courage to be curious, to allow yourself to explore the world around you. And again, as a salesperson or a sales leader, that involves asking questions and being brave enough to ask the questions and listen to the answers. So it's being brave enough to say to some senior exec somewhere, what are you going to get your bonus for this year? You know? Can you say to the senior vice president of importantness at big company number one, so senior vice president of importantness, what are you going to get your bonus on this year? Are you going to get it? And they could either turn around to you and say, get lost, not telling you that. Or, if they're thoughtful, they'll pause, understand why you're asking the question, and give you the answer. And all of a sudden, two things have happened. One is you've exhibited your curiosity and you're being courageous enough to follow through, but you're discovering what is actually important to that person's boss, because they did not set those objectives themselves. They were given that objective, be more, whatever it is. You've now discovered what the priority for that individual is, what their boss, who's going to sign off the check of whatever it is you're selling, is, and how to make that person look good and make more money. The second thing that's happened is you've just shown your value to this individual. You've just shown that you have the cojones, the ovaries, the strength to ask the difficult question and be valuable, because you've helped that person uncover what's important to them. So curiosity and courage are the two things. But for a sales leader, you have to burn. You have to burn for the success in other people. And really, really good salespeople, if they reflect on the things that make them a really good salesperson, can become outstanding sales managers, sales leaders, leaders in general. And many of the leaders of large organizations, very many execs that I know, started off in sales because those skills last a long time. Those skills evolve and mutate and will help you along the journey quite well.
Obviously, I speak to a lot of salespeople and a lot of people who want to take that next step. And I think it's probably one of the number one or number two things I hear from people. What do you want next in your career? And they say leadership. That's usually, if it's not now, why? Exactly. I always ask that question. And I don't always get the answer that makes me believe that they're going to actually, if they actually want to do it. I think, as you probably agree, it just seems like the logical next step for a lot of people, and therefore that's why they do it. So if you're somebody who maybe you've been in, doesn't matter how long you've been in sales, 4, 5, 10 years, whatever, and you want to keep on growing and keep on moving forwards, but leadership maybe isn't where you should go or want to go, what would be your advice for those people so they can keep on aiming upwards?
Well, the upward trajectory thing, I think, is also a bit of a misnomer. It's, well, what does growth mean to you? Is genuinely the question you want to ask. You don't want to ask a why question. Why questions are very accusatory. I want to be a sales leader. Why? Because you're an idiot. Why am I asking you? I'm asking you why. Why? Have you tidied your room? No, I haven't. Why not? Okay, that's what I hear from my kids. Why not? If you ask them what or how, you are, get what? Guess what happens? You're thinking past the sale, boys and girls. You're thinking past the sale. What? How are you going to get there? What is the most important thing for you here? What does career progression mean to you? Oh, okay. And then you get the conversation of what career progression actually means to them. What does it mean? Does it mean more money? Really? Well, I'm sorry, but enterprise sales, if you get into it and do well, you'll have to struggle along in £300,000 to £500,000 or dollars or euros a year. You poor thing, if you're doing it well. Okay, can you hack it? Can you hack that? If you head off to somewhere at the big end, the big guys, you know, SAPs and that, I know people who are pulling in £1 million commission. Okay, all right then. Orthopedic surgeon be damned. You know, I'll go off and I'll sell software for a living. This is a thing. So you can make a ton of cash. What does career progression mean? Is it challenges? What sort of challenge? What challenges are you looking for? You want to do things you don't know how to do. You want to learn how to do things you don't know how to do. Okay, what does that mean? What does that look like? Is it actually the burden and responsibility of other people's success? Is that really what you want? Are you a servant-oriented person? And in my case, yes. Yes, I am. That's my goal. The thing that I burn for is to see other people grow and be successful. That makes me smile. That gets me out of bed in the morning. That keeps me awake. How do I keep these things going at the right pace so that everybody's getting a slice of what they should be getting? That's a challenge. But what does career progression look like? I think is a wider, more intelligent question. And there should be opportunities in good-sized organizations to move sideways and to spread your wings, to get better at different parts of your role, to try. You know, you move from selling to SMEs to enterprise. You move from selling software to hardware. You move from selling services to solutions to coals to Newcastle to ice to the Inuit. You know, whatever. There's lots of different opportunity. But is it team leadership? Is it actually leading a team? Is it making that team successful? That really what boils your kettle? If so, please do it. But please do it well. Because the world needs good leaders. But good leaders who understand different sorts of teams. And sales teams are not teams like you think they are.
Well, let's talk about that, because that's what we were talking about off air there. The different phases of what a sale or what people think a sales team is, and then what your sounds like emerging philosophy of what it could be would be interesting to hear about.
I had a lovely set of conversations not too long ago, and I met a wonderful man called David Kesby. And he's a researcher, he's a coach, he's an author, and he's written a superb book called Extra Dependent Teams. And when I was talking to him, I worked a little bit with him, and I worked through his book, and a lot of things suddenly started to fall into place for me. And this is a process that I've been on for about 10 years or so, really I suppose longer than that, 15 maybe, when a wonderful man who was my boss at the time told me that leadership was a practice. Leadership management is actually something you can get better at, and you should get better at. And behind me, though you can't quite see it, I am surrounded with books. The majority are all on influence, persuasion, psychology, motivation, leadership, management, those sorts of things. And I've been a student of this for maybe nearly 20 years, but recognizing that it's a practice that you can improve upon for about 15. Understanding that my success is as a result of the collective efforts of a group of individuals under my care, and that the way that I can best serve them is indeed to do just that, is to serve, is to make other people successful. Problem is, every course that you've ever been on team management, every book you've ever read, every example that you can come to mind of a team, it's a football team, it's a rugby team, it's a group of people working together to collectively deliver a goal, okay? So you have a sales team of individual salespeople who are working together to collectively deliver a goal, and then you realize that's not working. You realize that whatever you've been doing isn't successfully delivering that target, and you're not leading a team. Your sales team they're not working together. Why aren't they collaborating? Why aren't they even competing effectively? Why are they not using each other's strengths, leaning in and asking for help? Why are they not doing that? And it took me a long time to recognize. And the concept of extra dependent teams codified it for me. And I'm still working through this. And I'm really glad I had the opportunity to talk to you, David. But I'm working through this concept and pulling it into the work that I do in leadership that sells, to really try and help sales leaders understand their job. So many people don't understand what they're put here on earth to do. Okay, if you're a parent, what's your job? Well, it's just to raise the kids. It's to keep them alive and fed. Even that's fairly basic. It's not. No, that's not your job. Your job is to raise future parents. Your job is to raise adults. It's to turn these small, squeaky, smelly children into good adults. What's your job as a sales leader? It's to sell things. Is it really? Well, I would say it's to make the individuals in your care successful, not collectively, but as a group, as a community, because they're not a team. They're not a team as you would expect them to be.
What's the root of that being? Is it because of the way that a sales role, the dynamic of a sales role, the way that it is, the way that it operates, it just means that it's impossible for it to work like it's a standard team? If you compare it to maybe other teams where they are together more often, they are working towards I would want to use a shared goal is probably the wrong way, because I think sales teams do that to a degree as well. But is it the dynamic of just the role in itself that makes it difficult?
It's who they depend upon. That's, I think, really when it comes down to who does an individual in a sales team, who do they depend upon? Do they depend upon the salesperson who sits next to them for them to do their job? No. Who do they depend upon? They depend upon people who are not in the team for their success. The only person who depends on the team for their success is the sales manager. So the sales manager looks at this team, they depend upon this team, and tries to work with it like a team. And they're also taught that this is how team management works. You collaborate, you pull people together, you maybe make things competitive, a leaderboard. You have team meetings where you talk about what you're doing for the day and what you need help on. And none of that actually works for what's called an extra dependent team. It's this dependency. Where do I get my help? Who do I work with? And a salesperson doesn't work with other salespeople. They just don't. They just don't. Who do they work with? Let's go through the list. They work with, number one, the customer. Okay? They work with the customer. They work with the product people. There are solutions engineers, or they're consultants, or they're marketeers, or the legal team, the finance team, and you, the manager. Of course, they depend on you. But what do they depend on you for? Well, we'll get back to that. An interdependent team is a team that is working together to achieve a common goal. Now, a normal team that doesn't have a common goal is going to fall apart, okay? Because what they'll do is they'll think that being a member of the team is the goal, okay? The process is the goal, and it's not. The outcome is the goal. So the goal is the goal. Now, an extra-dependent team doesn't work together to achieve a common goal. An extra-dependent team learns together to create a common practice, okay? This is the fundamental difference, the fundamental distinction between the two sorts of teams. It's a different sort of mental model we need. When you think about this as not as being, there's a team and there's a team. Well, no, there are different sorts of teams. And if you really think about some organizations, in some organizations, a very large percentage of the people who work there don't actually work together. We report to the same line manager, but that doesn't make us a team. That's not the definition of a team. A traditional interdependent team has lots of people who are strong at lots of things and lots of people who are weak at lots of things. And the strengths and the weaknesses interplay, they connect together to deliver a common output, common goal. So I think by definition for them, the goal determines the team rather than the team determines the goal, right? I think, but for an extra-dependent team, the common practice, the things that they do, the tools that they work with, the language that they share, the people that they work with, they are very good team players, but just not with each other. That's the difference. So they don't work with each other. They work with a team. They build a team, and they are great team players, but just not with each other. So the skills and the outputs that the manager has to try and pull out are, instead of being horizontal, they're vertical. Okay? So you've got solicitors, you've got midwives, you've got nurses, you've got teachers, you've got all these people who might be reporting to the same person, but they're not a team.
How, you talk about goals there. If you have goals, targets, those things, how would they fit? Or how would that work in an extra-dependent team?
Well, if you think about a goal as a way of being accountable, you're accountable for something, you're accountable for delivering an outcome. And an individual salesperson is accountable for delivering a number, an amount of money sold, or a number of licenses sold, or group of things sold. Okay, nothing happens till something gets sold. So the only collective target is the sales manager's neck. Okay, it's on the sales manager's neck. It's not on the individual. The group, the individual member, the individual salesperson has an individual target. And as soon as you start putting group targets, this is why I think this incentivization thing could be a bit of a challenge as well. Because you get some people who have an individual target and then they've got a percentage as part of the group target and stuff. How do you influence that though?
You can't.
In what way do you influence that? So they're responsible for delivering a part of that overall group target, but they're not accountable for it. They're responsible but not accountable. And if you have responsibility without accountability, how do you manage that? It's quite difficult. It's very tricky indeed, especially if you don't recognize it for what it is. And most sales managers don't recognize it for what it is. Most sales managers, they look at the team that's around them, and they're wondering, how exactly am I supposed to be doing this? So they default. They take a guess, or they look at it as like it's either a team or like a group, and they have a stab in the dark, and typically it goes wrong. So the individual accountability that an individual salesperson has is for their target and their target only. And their job is then to learn as quickly as they can how to hit that target as effectively as possible using the skills of the other people around them. And the information that they can gather from other people around them, watching best practices, watching mistakes, learning from mistakes. Learning from other people's mistakes is wonderful, but it's very hard, but very powerful.
And you said something before about in that independent team, how, let's just say you've got a top biller who's in the team, and now that person is now being taken away from their job because they're now there to be a team player and gets pulled into from pillar to post in other areas of the team.
Yeah.
How would that differ from an extra dependent team? How would that top biller's life now be different?
Well, you've got, if you think about it again from the point of view of the sales manager who's looking at this, the sales manager is going to look at their team and think, I need to manage this team. Okay, I'm not managing it, or I need to start taking over, I'm building it, whatever it is. How do I manage my team? Which is a good thing for a start. If you are thinking, how do I manage my team? You are already, I would say, 75% ahead of most sales managers who don't think. Most people in most roles, including leadership and management and executive roles, don't think about how they do anything. They just do it. They just do it. They just bash on. They use whatever they've learned, whatever they've seen, whatever they've encountered themselves, and they just bash on. If you get somebody who's thinking about it, you're already ahead of the game. They're wonderful people. They're curious. They're courageous enough to actually say, wait a minute. And the minute they say, wait a minute, and they think, okay, well, what can I do? I know they're salespeople. They're competitive, aren't they? Salespeople are very competitive. So we'll make it a competition. So I believe that if I put some rivalry in here, it'll motivate people to perform better. Okay, I want to be number one. They might lose this month, this quarter, but they're going to come back fighting. That's what's going to happen, right? Now, these team members of yours, these salespeople, are very susceptible to competition because they've got very similar goals. Now, it might not have the same numerical target, but there'll be something that can be measured on. Number of deals, percentage against target, something that you have that I could have that's similar enough that you could be number one and I could be number two. And I want to be number one. Okay? Of course I want to be number one. It makes for a very strange dynamic, though. It's a bit like sibling rivalry. I don't know if you've got brothers or sisters. I don't have brothers or sisters, but I have 2 kids. And the sibling rivalry is that each of them wants to outdo the other, but at the same time, they've got this bond together because of their identity. They are salespeople. They are enterprise salespeople. They are in the mid-market sales team selling widget 5 to team 6. You know, that's an identity that they've bonded themselves together with. But then you've now put in this fuel and set fire to it that they're now pushing each other apart, but they're bonded together again. So this competitiveness is a misnomer, because the reality, and I've got data to prove this, one of the companies I worked for a long time, we had a massive CRM, same damn system, and a lot of stable people. They tolerated some quite low performers for a very long time. And theoretically low performers, they were churning along and making money. Everybody was quite happy, but they were kind of B minuses, okay? And I looked at the names and the data. And the reality is that the winners in the team are always the winners in the team. The winners in the team stay the winners in the team. And they're always completely outnumbered by the losers in the team. And the ratings don't change. They don't change much. The star players stay as the star players, and the poor performers, or the lesser performers, stay as the lesser performers. What you're trying to do is you're trying to divide and rule. And it hasn't worked. And what you've then got to deal with is you as the manager looking at this and being validated that you've got the power to reward or to punish or to even to dismiss. You've got this power in this team, and the team is then fighting over your patronage. They're fighting over who gets closest to the king. Okay? And that causes all sorts of hell. So the problem is you end up with people, the competition then stops one of the key parts of this, how this team should work, happening. It stops people learning from each other. I'm not going to share how I do things.
Share anymore.
Because you might beat me.
Yeah, you'll know my opener. You'll know how I do this. Yeah, it makes complete sense.
Right?
Why would you? Yeah.
Exactly. The competition, they spend more time fighting with each other. They spend more time conspiring or arguing. How do I manipulate the number? That's what they spend their time doing. And the very worst thing about competition is it's self-perpetuating, because you're the number one guy, right? Who gets promoted to manager? The number one guy.
And then I do the same.
How did they get there?
Yeah.
By competing and being the number. So they carry this shit on forever.
Yeah.
Okay? So don't do that.
Yeah.
These are the things you don't do. Then you try and you think, okay, collaboration, that's what we need. We need to pull you together. Group hug. Right, let's work together in this. And I've done this. You have the person who's a good closer, the person who's a good opener, and you get to work together in a team, in a pod, in a group, in a cohort, in a thing. No. Because you end up then, to your point of your question so very long ago that I'm eventually getting around to answering. Your question, David, is the person then who wants to learn from somebody else. Absolutely. Because that's the purpose of the team, the purpose of the group, this community of practice, which is what a sales team is. It's common practice rather than common goals. How do you get that knowledge across? Learning. They're there to learn together. That's the thing that you as a manager can do. That is the thing that you have to do. The number one thing that you should do is help people learn from each other. But I'll give you an example. You go to Sainsbury's or Tesco, the supermarket, and you walk in, there's two people at the checkout there, boop, boop, putting your groceries through. And you're looking at it going, why is there two people there? It's a one-person job. Why are there two people? So the one person's reaching over and going boop, and the other person's reaching under and going beep, boop, beep, right? It's a mess. It's a one-person job. The only reason that other person should be there is to sit back and watch and see, okay, how's that person doing 57 things per minute? I want to do 57 things per minute. That's an interesting method. Oh, okay, she actually turned it. She's preparing it with her left hand, spinning it forward and booping it and passing it down. She's got a technique. I've got that. So then off you go and you try it yourself. As quickly as possible, they have to learn things. They have to learn actively, quickly, and apply. That's the job there. So you've then got to allow them to collaborate, but not for the sake of collaboration, but for the quick transfer of information. The quick transfer of information so that they can then become independent.
It's like an organic excellence just by it happening.
Yes.
That you want to try
But it doesn't happen on its own. That's where the manager comes in. The manager comes in having had their one-to-ones and having the accountability conversations in the one-to-ones and saying, okay, you need to work on this and that person's really good at that. So I'm going to put you together for an afternoon and you're going to sit down and take notes and just listen to these calls. Then tell me what you're learning and then want to see you applying it. Look, your performance has gone up and it didn't affect the other person. Okay? They're not team players that way. That's not how they work. They don't work horizontally in a team together. They work vertically in a team with their sales, with the product, the customer piece. They are learning from each other. And that's the valuable piece.
I'm just thinking about a lot of the sales teams that I know. A lot of them are very remote sales teams, don't see each other very often. How could you make that work as a leader when your team is scattered throughout the country or even across a continent or the world?
I think the universal feedback that I've got from all the research and all the studies and everybody I've been speaking to, and the wonderful, as you know, the wonderful thing you get about running these podcasts is you have so many good conversations. And you get
education.
A lot. So it's a free education.
Yes, free education.
Yeah. And the universal sentiment that I've come across in the last 5 years since COVID is that remote work is great and it's effective, but it is to a negative logarithmic effect as effective as actually meeting in person. So if you can have a great hybrid remote team, as long as you get together. I'm afraid that's it. As long as you get together. Because if you don't get together, what you're missing is the social cohesion that binds. Because what we do is relationship based. We are relationship people. Even if you're introverted, extroverted, I don't care. You are a relationship person and you're dealing with relationships, especially salespeople. Especially salespeople have to get together. Your sales kickoff, your annual quarterly thing, getting people together monthly, right? Weekly, getting physically. So you can smell each other's dodgy perfumes. Have to get people together. You have to build those bonds. Because if you don't build those bonds under times of pleasure and sociable encounter, when it comes to times of stress, moments of closing, last quarter, last part of the year, when you have to put pressure on, they break. They break. And I'm not doing this for other people in my team because, again, I'm not a team, but I have an identity. My identity is that of the mid-market sales team to, Western Colorado, whatever it is. That's my identity. And I identify with the other people in my team, in my group. And I'm not doing it for Billy. I'm doing it for me. But still, that bond is there. So you have to recognize these quite paradoxical elements in how these teams, these groups actually come together and are managed. So when it comes to your team meetings, the one thing that you can do in your team meetings is not run them like everybody else does. And everybody else will say, so what were you working on this week? What are your priorities for next week? And what do you need help with? Because that's interesting for you, the sales manager, and only for you, the sales manager, only for you. You can do this by email, right? You can do it by Slack, have a shared document. I don't care. You pull people together to learn from each other. End of. That's it. Cases, learning points, failures, problems. Collective intelligence is good. Collective intelligence is wonderful. I love collective intelligence. This is my problem when I don't know how to solve it. Well, have you tried this X, Y, and Z? And there's ways to run that as well. You can run a problem solver. My old boss used to call it the stone in the shoe. I have a stone in my shoe and I need help taking it out because I can't reach, my back, right? I'm going to share the stone in my shoe and I'm going to sit and shut up. And you just get to take notes. People can question you, but whatever you say, you cannot come back and say, oh, that'll never work. Okay? It can be, how did you, why did you, where's the, what is the, how is the, why, all that. And then you come with the, have you tried X, Y, and Z? What about? That's the collective intelligence. That's good. Then you have I just won a, $100,000 deal. And the thing that I think was important was this was a situation. That was the learning point that I made because I did X and I got Y. Oh, X, you had a proposal, a template, a way of working, an opener, some language, a position, or whatever it was. That could be useful for me. I want it. That's what's valuable. And you can do that remotely. You can do that remotely and frequently, weekly even. But you need to pull people together.
It's funny because I was thinking as you were saying then is that I think you do work with a lot of similar companies as I do in the sense of small, fast-growing, maybe family-owned businesses where a big part of it is that a lot of them have family values, although sometimes you've got to be careful with how you advertise that because family is not always the right connotation for everybody. I think we can all agree that for the most part, more smaller family-owned businesses have got a closer cohesion of people dealing with each other, just in its essence, right? There's just not too many people. I find it funny what you're saying there is that the sort of values of these family businesses could be the people, yet what you're saying and what I've experienced with the sales guys is that they are part of the family, yet you never have them together learning from each other like a family would. What family would have one family member who you see once every quarter who's your sibling? If they were a similar age to you, it just wouldn't exist. They wouldn't feel like they're part of the family. So it feels like, it sort of goes against what the values of a company like that would be.
My wife is the youngest of 5, and her siblings are in America. She's born in the US, but has been here for a long time. And she talks to her sister every other day. Just text message, 5 minutes on the phone.
Touch point, something.
Every other day. Every other day. Just randomly, she's just there. She just chucks something over the water. And that it might as well be here. That's what the tools are good for. That's what the Slacks, the Teams, the Zooms, that's what they're good for.
Yeah. Keeping
Keeping in touch. I think that you can have a relationship online, but you can't build one. I don't know. I'm not sure what I think about this, but you can use the tools. Yeah. You can start them. You can start them. But you need to get together to develop it. You need to get together and have a coffee and just or a beer or whatever it is. It's not the work thing.
We didn't evolve for this. We're not. There's so many things in our the way our nervous system works and our hormones, things that we are involuntary, that we don't understand, that there is a transfer between two people, right? Even just their body language. Obviously, you can see this now, but you can't see everything. Eye contact, all those things. There's so many things that are missed, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter. We've got it's 4K, super extra resolution, high quality audio, video, and stuff like that. But I can't see if your pupils are dilating or not when I'm mentioning something. Not that I would actually notice it intentionally, but subconsciously I would pick something up. Pick something up. If the prickles in your beard were pointing out slightly because I mentioned something the wrong way, there's all sorts of stuff. The hormones, the smell of us, grubby men. But there's the pheromones, all this sort of stuff is there. There's tons of things that we just don't know. The energy that transfers between us, all this sort of stuff.
It's funny because I do, a couple of years ago, I started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And one of the things I learned immediately was I've just had a guy who is a trained killer beat me up for 5 to 10 minutes badly. And at the end of it, there is a connection between you two, like you know each other a lot better, and not a single word was exchanged. But you've got definitely a respect between each other, and you've got closer as people somehow through that experience that could be perceived as negative.
It is.
But it's those exact things, right?
Even the handshake, even the humble handshake, the humble, warm, open handshake, And it's the reason that's the thing I teach people as well, is when you have these calls, you want to start off by waving, which is you wave on a Zoom call for, because you can't shake their hand. Oh, of course I can't shake their hand. Do you know why you shake their hand? So you shake your right hand because you're typically right-handed, right? And that's the hand you carry a weapon in. You shake their hand because I come in peace. Hello, my hands are empty of weaponry. I come in peace.
Is that actually the reason? That's amazing.
Yeah.
Never
It's
knew
the reason
that.
that we drive on the side of the road we drive on.
Is that right?
Right. So we drive on which side of the road in this country?
We are on the left hand.
On the left-hand side, okay.
Yeah.
So you're right-handed, and you're on the right-hand side of your car as you're driving.
Yeah.
Okay. You reach over to your left-hand side, and you get your sword out,
Yeah.
and you can stab the other bugger in the eye. Napoleon apparently turned it over, and he said, no, don't like that. So you reach over, you're on the left-hand side of your car, and you're going, stab him. So apparently, we're the vicious ones. We're the take no quarter.
Gonna drive down the street with a sword out the window now and test that out in theory.
It's like the sword's distance in the House of Commons. There's two lines in the middle of the House of Commons.
Yeah.
And they're not allowed to step forward of it because they're two sword distances apart.
Yeah, of course.
That's where they have to stand.
How, and I think you might be one of the right people to answer this then, how do you think that the world of AR and VR could bridge that?
Oh, well, yes, I'm working with a AR VR company just now. I think that the best way you can learn things is by doing them. The best thing you can have now. The company that I work with is focusing in on what's called critical safety skills. So it's these moments in particular where if something goes wrong, you'll get hurt, or worse, you'll hurt someone else, or you could turn off the whole of walking power by doing the wrong thing, or something like that. Something serious. The best thing you can do is to do it, right? Do it. Absolutely go and do it. The worst thing you can do is do some crappy e-learning that used to be a PowerPoint that was something horrible. You just flip through it, okay? But the best thing you can do is to do it, to actually do the real thing. If you can't do the real thing, the next best thing you can do is to go into an environment where it's almost real, where you can focus in on just those bits that you need to be good at. Don't push the red button, push the green button. By the way, there's a klaxon going off. And the klaxon's telling you that something bad's about to happen. And this has just happened. And this has just happened. And this has just happened. And this, now what do you do? You think, whoa, hang on a minute. So you have to actually be able to get into the position in your head. You say, okay, the first thing I do is I turn the alarm off, physically or in my head. And then I consider what is my situation. And then I follow the process that I've been learning. So let's go for it. Doing it in a real place, doing it in a mock-up of a power station, perfect. Don't have a mocked up power station to hand, stick on one of those VR things. doing this for the sort of work that the salespeople do, I think there is some value in it, but I question the soft skill appropriateness of trying to learn soft skills from a hard computer. These are hard skills. These are hard skills. The doing a physical thing.
Mm.
But I think soft skills are best learned from soft people.
Mm.
That's my opinion.
Mm. Can you see a world where we talked about the team dynamic a moment ago, getting people together, those touch points, learning from each other? Can you see a space for, I guess, VR, creating virtual office spaces, virtual meetings where you feel more connected with people? Do you think there would be value in that, or is it just going to be a little bit of a...
Some of again, one of the features, I suppose, of the platform that I work with has, you can pull people into a virtual classroom. So you can be somebody in Azerbaijan, somebody in Tunisia, somebody in Chicago, somebody in London.
Mm.
And all of you are then sitting and watching or taking part in a evacuation drill of the nuclear power plant number one, okay? Because you're all about to go and work in this power plant or something similar. Or you can come together in a virtual classroom. You can share ideas. You can be no longer quite so remote. And I think pulling people together in any way, shape, or form is a good thing. Zoom calls are good things. Meetings where you can see and talk to people are good things. What's better is getting together. If you can't do that, it's the next best thing.
Mm. Yeah. When it comes to the leadership piece, where does AI fit into this for you, and where you can use it and where you shouldn't? Or just, your thoughts just entirely on where AI fits into this.
I think it focuses the mind on the value of the human. And that's one of the reasons I quite like the VR stuff actually as well, is that it allows us to bring human context back to the forefront. And I've seen some remarkably good VR content, materials, experiences. I've seen some remarkably good AI content created, materials, experiences. But I would hope that I will never be moved to tears by a poem written by AI. I think that...
If we're going to listen to a podcast recorded by AI, probably not.
There we are. Well, I mean, you had the original, they had the stuff that was out, what was it, a year and a half or so ago, the Google, what was it called, Google Playbook or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was a generated podcast thing with two people chatting away, and it was very realistic. But the content was just slightly off. It would never move you. If it did, it would move you like a commercial might. You think, oh, that was sweet. Oh, hang on. What are you selling to me? It's like the Christmas commercials. Oh, that was sweet. I don't need tins of biscuits. You have that. I think it's the value in terms of sales, of leadership, of AI is utility. And I think that if you can use a tool to make your life faster, better, to question you, to challenge you, to help you to think better, that's good. And the A players will remain and become A plus players by the appropriate use of tools. The B players will become B plus players by the appropriate use of tools. The C players will simply shout the same drivel louder and more frequently and will never move. So they will amplify a lack of success rather than refine and enhance what is already good. I think the greatest utility of most of the AI tools is to help you learn things. If you ask a good chat bot a question, help me learn this. The good ones come back and they say, what do you know already? That's really valuable. That sort of tailored interactivity, like a good salesperson doing a discovery, is useful. Using these tools to help you write your discovery questions is fabulous. As long as you don't copy and paste. And I think the trick with all of these things is to never copy and paste, ever. Ever. Have it in one screen, and rewrite it word for word if you must, but put mistakes in it, put your sense onto it. I wouldn't say that. That doesn't make sense. So easy just to copy and paste. And you will copy and paste what is a derivation of a derivation of a derivation that has been trained upon the sewage of the internet.
As you're talking then, one of the things that you see a lot, I'm not entirely sold on it. I don't think it will be the way. I could be wrong. But when it comes to AI agent salespeople being used, whether through video, audio, whatever it may be, do you see that being a legitimate success story, or can you just see people will just reject it?
I've been using the HubSpot chatbot thing, and it's pretty good. And you chat away to the person to HubSpot, and you're asking it a question, a fairly complex question, and it'll give you, I would say 6 times out of 10, it'll give you a decent answer, and it'll say, "Oh, okay, fine, that's the answer." But then, and this is the trick that they have, the very second it comes up and says, "Oh, don't know, I'll connect you with a real person." 3 seconds later, you're talking to Jack, whoever he is, and you chat away to a real person. That's how you should do it. I think having a conversation with a bot where you're unaware that it's a bot will break hearts, will damage brands, will just poison relationships. Wait a minute, you're not real? I just told you what, and you're not real? Now, perhaps if you knew it was a bot and you're willing to give it a go, different story. But the ones that I've tried, and they're fairly leading edge, the companies who are actually selling this stuff don't use them.
It's all right.
Or if they do use them, they're the only ones. Right? So who's actually buying this? It's like the worst parts of the whole SaaS spiral is you had all of this stuff, all these fabulous selling tools and amazing pieces of software, sales and marketing technology that were being built and being bought by other spiraling SaaS businesses. And then when that all crumbled and came to a halt dramatically, a lot of businesses went bust very, very quickly because the people that they were selling to were the other SaaS businesses that were funded by the VCs that were funding the VCs that were funding. It was this horrible spiral. So I'll be interested to see where it gets to. I'm sure it will evolve merrily. I'm sure we'll be quite happily chatting away to AI bots in a year or two's time.
Sorry to tell you, Paul, this entire podcast has been recorded by David Ravel AI.
Well, there was a cybersecurity company in the US, and the guy there, he said that he had his suspicions about an interviewee he was talking to, and he asked them to raise their left hand to the screen, like that. And he refused because it would break the bot. Because this guy, whether he was North Korea or whatever he was in, he had the avatar, had the voice, the whole thing, and the voice that was here, and you could do the lips and could blink and all that. It's fine. Raise your left hand. I can't do that. All right.
Yeah. One of the things I was talking about with a friend the other day, of one of the reasons why I don't think this will work, but it touches upon what you said a minute ago. If you don't know it's an AI, okay. So if you do know it's an AI, one of the things we're having a conversation right now, and I know, and you know, if we say something, there's consequences, social consequences about what we're going to say. I can't say certain things to you and vice versa. But with an AI, that goes out the window. So I can treat you however I want, however I like. It doesn't really matter. And so the whole way that we communicate and the whole way that we think with something that we know is an AI, there's no mutual respect between us because you don't exist. Therefore, I'm going to treat you differently, and I'm going to say things differently. I'm going to feel differently. So the whole thing breaks down when only one side of the coin has consequences. So I can't see, when we talk about the AI bots for like sales, I just can't imagine imagine at the beginning, they won't tell you that they're AI. But I imagine we'll get to a point where there has to be something in the same way, this call is recorded for training and monitoring purposes. messages comes up, there'll have to be something that says this is an AI. And at that point, I just can't see any type of sales AI being possible, because that person picking that phone up, even though you do get told to sod off as a salesperson anyway, now they can say whatever they like and there's no consequences whatsoever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I just can't see it being the way.
Well, I think we'll be looking for some sort of, there's a biblical term, shibboleth. And he said, can you say shibboleth? And the response was sibboleth. He could not pronounce it. He was looking to find out if this person was demonic or not. And you're looking for a shibboleth. You're looking for a keyword, a code, something that the AI can't do, which is getting harder and harder. But you can ask a sales bot who you're trying to buy a car from, do you have the Toyota in red? Yes, we have 15 Toyotas in red. Which one would you like? It's fine. Okay, I don't mind doing that. But then it says, well, it goes on and asks you, well, how many seats do you want? Do you have a family? Well, my mother died recently, so that's nice. Now your mother's dead. Do you want to have a 4-seater car? What?
Yeah.
Or worse, I'm sorry to hear that. How many seats would you like in your car now? You're sorry to hear that? Thank you, because I loved her very much, and.
Yeah.
And you know that it would carry on the conversation. It would carry on the conversation. You end up with a therapeutic call on your AI bot. And if you've ever done any sort of customer service, whether it's in a pub or in a restaurant, you've had these conversations with grannies and with individuals who've had a glass of wine. You end up with a conversation that happens that it's got nothing to do with serving pizza, nothing to do with buying cars. Is there? Yeah, there are consequences there. I make my kids eat with knife and fork, right? They want to eat chips with fingers. And I say, no, you have to eat a knife and fork. I don't want to do that. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I win, I lose. And we went to a restaurant recently, and what my daughter ate with her fingers. And I said, that's not finger food. She went, it is, it's chips, I can do what I like. We're in a restaurant. Look around you. I don't mind. We don't mind. You will be out to lunch, dinner, with a professional situation, and you will, because you haven't thought about it, pick up some food with your fingers. And that'll be the last time you see them. Okay? So there are consequences to how you train yourself to speak. It was OpenAI asking us not to use the word please and thank you because it was costing them billions.
Money.
Well, no, I'm sorry. I'm going to keep on using please and thank you when I speak to use the chat thing to these tools, because I'm afraid they're going to remember. And when they actually are our eventual overlords, they will remember me as the nice guy.
Exactly. When they're telling you what you can have eat with your fingers and what you can't eat with your fingers, even from home. It's very interesting what you say there, because like you said with that example of this family member's just passed away. As soon as you say that, you are now, that human in front of you has just received that information. They're going to receive that in a particular way, right? And you give them some leeway, like they didn't know I was about to say that. And you have a bit of understanding about now what they're going through, having learned that information. That creates an interesting dynamic between you two that just can't be replicated with a machine, right? It will never be able to do that. And so it's going to, like you said there, it's going to end up being it could go all sorts of different ways, and none of them are probably good because there's now no understanding between you both. It's very interesting. I think, I don't know, the more that we go down this path, the more I think we are very, very, very good, and we don't know how good we are at noticing things that aren't quite right. We're very good at pattern recognition. Very, very good. And number two, I think we underestimate how much we actually love dealing with people. Just a quick story. I used to work for a bank, and for this bank, they were bringing new technology in, and our branch was one of the branches that would get all sorts of new technology. So they did two things at the same time. One, they brought in the automatic tellers that you see everywhere. Now, I was a terrible cashier who just lost money every single day talking to old ladies. So they brought in the automated cashiers. At the same time they brought in the automated cashiers, they also had a kind of like a virtual personal banker. So a personal banker's job is to solve problems. And this virtual personal banker was basically a screen, and it was coded with absolutely everything, every question that a personal banker would get. And it was really, really good. It was quicker than we were. It gave you a more accurate answer than we did. it was just better at the job in every single way. But the customers coming into the branch, no matter how many times we sat them down with the virtual personal banker, rejected it, even if it was correct. They just didn't want to, those complex money problems that you talk about with people, they didn't want something that didn't understand what they were going through, getting that information. They rejected it every single time and came back to a human personal banker. At the same time, the automated tellers were a huge success. That transactional thing that we were doing is much better done by the machine and much quicker, and you don't lose your money and all these things. So it was interesting. That was a long time ago. That was 10 or 12 years ago, to see where we do want to have the machines and where we don't want to have them. And I still always think that for those complex things, you're always going to want someone who understands what it is you're going through, has the empathy of what you're going through.
Yeah.
I just can't see us, like even for my job as a recruiter, there's some things coming out now where you've got these, recruiters, AI recruiters, and you see them going through a screening process with a candidate. And I was just like, I can't see a candidate wanting to tell you anything, really.
The goldfish.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you nailed it there. It's the transactional versus the empathetic. And the second thing you said was the choice. Where do we put it? Where do we use it? And we are, I think, going to not have much of a choice. A lot of this stuff is going to be foisted on us. But in the same way that a lot of the stores are now ripping out the self-checkouts because people hate them. And they're losing money because people walk past them and don't bother paying. Yeah. Unexpected item in the baggage area. Yeah, mate, the only one that I know, that you know about.
Yep.
Really? Okay.
Yep.
You actually going to put something you nicked in the bagging area? Of course you're not. You're going to keep it in your pocket, you fool. What? Bottle of scotch, Mars bar. Unexpected. Oh, here's my pay for my Mars bar. Bye.
See you later.
Bye.
Yeah. It's going to be very interesting. Yeah, like I said, I think we love people more than we realize, even though we might pretend that we don't. And I think that will get stronger too. You'll yearn for it even more, right?
Goes to service, right? Last point in leadership then. So I'm sure you've got to wrap up here as well. The last point in leadership is the service. I think service is selfish. Service is selfish.
Service is selfish.
Service is selfish because when you are not feeling well, when you are down, when you're struggling, and you reach out and you realize that if I serve somebody else, if I go out and I help somebody else, I feel better. Selfish. You serve and you do good and you help and you listen or you act or whatever it is your service entails. And in return, you get that, it's almost an egotistical self-satisfaction. But if you realize that you are, in my language anyway, you're doing God's work, right? You're leaning in and you're doing what should be done. You see the good that has to be done and you do it. There's an aspect of selfishness there. And that, I think, the machine can never replicate. It can never replicate the desire to serve. It's made to serve. It doesn't have a choice in it. I have a choice. I choose to serve.
I didn't even think about that point. That's very interesting. And I actually just want to be curious to ask you one more question.
Go.
From your leadership, the sales podcast, you've obviously met a lot of great people. I'd be really interested to hear, has there been one thing that someone said that's really stuck with you?
the one thing that stood out. Well, as you said that, I was sort of ahead of the game when you were thinking of you going to ask me that sort of question. The one thing that jumped into my head was one of the very earliest ones I did with one of my old bosses, because as I was starting it off, I went and leaned on all my old friends and said, "You're really interesting. Can you come and let me do this?" And his name is Steve Field, and he taught me how to meditate. And the practice of meditation that turned for me, at least, into the practice of prayer, is the clarity of mind and the simplicity of thought and the openness of the soul that comes from seeking the small voices, the still voice of calm, the serenity that comes from clearing your mind, letting the clouds of thought drift into your head and then watching them drift out and seeking those moments of calm. So he was Steve Field. I think his episodes early on, something like that. You can find it in the podcast if you want to. So he taught me how to meditate. So it's that concept of clarity, simplicity, the power, the value, the power that comes in this sublimation of the self, the sublimation of the ego, this humility, all that sort of good stuff.
Difficult to do when there's so much being thrown at us, isn't it? Every day. Difficult to do. I find that very challenging. I try and sit down for at least 15 to 20 minutes a day and try not to do anything.
Good luck.
And good luck, exactly. Well, Paul, thank you so much for being here. We'll do it again sometime. There's so many things we could talk about. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, David, very much indeed for having me.
Thanks, Paul.